What's up and welcome back. Talking Nutrition 31. Did you know that you burn more calories if you eat tiny meals about 20 times per day? Or maybe not.
No.
We'll find out today. No, not really. Today we're going to talk about the thermic effect of food. Basically, the calories you burn through digestion, which actually does account for about 10% of your total daily energy expenditure, which is, it counts. It's not going to move the needle. It's not going to make you lose fat, but it's a nice little bonus, like to mention a study, which, by the way, I base a blog on, so I'll link that below as well. But first, just want to do a little catch up because you got a second dog, right?
Yeah. So it was something that we were thinking about for a while because one of Eric's friends almost adopted her. Then Eric's parents almost adopted her. And it just was like swirling around in my head for so long. I couldn't stop thinking about it. And it's Rose's cousin. So they have the same, or no, their mothers are sisters. And the original owner brought her back to the breeder and couldn't take care of her for some reason, which I was like, she's so easy. She's super affectionate, super loving, and these two are getting along really good. So it's definitely like they're crazy when they play, and it's like chaos when I'm trying to work. And so some days Eric's been taking Stormy so we can just like chill and I can actually focus on my work. But other than that, it's been so good.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
I think because we've always had two pets, we had two dogs when I grew up, and it was always two. And I think that's a good thing because they have each other,
Yeah.
Even if you're not home, they'll play together. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I think, or I believe it's probably better for the pet in general anyway,
Yeah. They're opposites. So like Rose is so crazy. Like I don't think I realized how crazy Rose was until Stormy came in the picture. Like she is so hyper, super high energy. And Stormy is like super chill and super affectionate. And Rose is affectionate, but Stormy's like on another level. So they kind of balance each other out, which is good.
That's great. No, I love that. That's great. I can't wait to get a dog eventually.
Yeah.
Got to get a house first.
Yeah.
Right now we're in an apartment with two cats already, so it'll be chaos.
Yeah.
Plus my girlfriend is allergic, so we gotta figure out a situation because I do really want to have a dog.
Yeah.
Maybe two.
Yeah.
We'll see. I'm a dog person, I guess I'm both. I was thinking about that.
I grew up with cats, and then I got a dog for the first time last year, and I was like, why didn't I ever have a dog?
I feel like people get so passionate about that shit. It's kind of like the pineapple on pizza thing. It's like,
yeah. At
the end of the day, who the fuck cares? Like, if
I know.
Who the fuck cares? Because I've seen people literally almost fight on this about this shit, and have disc. Well, about the pizza thing, but even with cats and dogs,
Yeah.
I told someone not too long ago when we got these two, and they were like, "Oh yeah, no, I like dogs. I don't like cats." I was like, "Well, yeah, cool. Let me have cats."
Yeah, I do.
And they're great. Anyway, I didn't think we were going to talk about pets today, but we probably should because there's actually research behind this. There is research on, I think, lower stress when you have pets in your life.
It's good for your hormones.
Also, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Sure is.
Get you extra anabolic.
Yeah.
Cool. So thermic effect, real quick, before we get into this. Thermic effect, like I said, it's about 10% of your total daily energy expenditure, and you can kind of influence that by adjusting your macro split, right? So once again, it's not really going to be the biggest mover, but it does count. Now, real quick, if we look at protein, carbs, and fats, protein is going to be 20 to 30%. Carbs, 5 to 10, and then fats, 0 to 3. So that means that when you eat protein, of those calories, 20 to 30% gets burned off through digestion already. For carbs, it's 5 to 10. Once again, the fats, 0 to 3. So you can kind of influence that. And then also by eating fiber as well, you'll increase your thermic effect. So altogether, food quality is going to matter. And I do think that in the long term, you're going to benefit from eating mostly whole foods, having a higher protein diet, etc., in terms of at least supporting fat loss and then also just making it easier because those foods are also more filling, right? Protein, fiber, etc. So
Right.
all great stuff. So first, kind of want to bust a myth, Christine, because we've all heard that eating tiny meals many times throughout the day spikes in metabolism, right?
Yeah, I definitely think that this is exaggerated. Very much exaggerated. We had said on here that it came from bodybuilders. I'm not. Is that where it came from? You think?
I've heard so. I'm not sure. That's why I put likely. So like I have heard that where people sometimes think like, well, they look at bodybuilders, they were like bulking and they had to get so much food in or something. And I do believe at some point they thought it was higher based on like how often you would eat. But turns out not to be true. That's the cool thing about research too. We just learn new shit and then sometimes ends up not being true, you know?
Right. So thermic effect of food, it's more so going to depend. So an increase in thermic effect of food is more so going to depend on, your total caloric intake for the day. Also, like Johan mentioned, like protein, right, is going to increase that thermic effect of food versus carbs and fats. So it comes down to more so how much you're eating and that macro split. Or, I mean, if you're not tracking macro, just how much, protein you're intaking or fiber you're intaking.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think once again, I do think it's a good idea to try to at least leverage that, at least those foods,
Oh yeah.
Because if we would look at something like, let's say that a diet is completely like processed stuff, and processed foods are already like more easily absorbed and stuff, easier to break down. Mm-hmm. That versus like, like a mostly whole food, minimally processed food diet, I do think that's going to be a big difference,
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, once again, so it does depend on the total amount. It's not that you.
Yeah, because if you're, for example, like thermic effect of food, so it's going to decrease, say you're in a cut, your thermic effect of food is going to decrease simply because you're eating less food, right? And vice versa. If you're reverse dieting or at maintenance, your thermic effect will increase because you're eating more food.
Yeah. So like it is true that your metabolic rate increases after eating, but it's not like you're going to get more and more just by eating 6, 7, 8 meals,
Right.
Cool. So I did want to mention a study here, which I thought was really cool. And then we'll get into why we actually think it's important to have a frequent schedule, right? That's kind of set. So there was a 2022 randomized control trial published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, and they looked at the effect of a irregular meal pattern versus kind of like a more consistent one, right? They looked at the effects on thermic effect, which is our main topic today, and they also looked at glucose, insulin, lipid profile, appetite regulation in women who are overweight or with obesity and confirmed insulin resistance. So the researchers had a group of women consume 6 meals each day for 2 weeks on one occasion and 3 to 9 meals a day for 2 weeks on another occasion. And this was randomized. So all meals were provided to the women so that total energy intake should be identical. Now afterwards, they measured the thermic effect of a test meal, and they found that it was 27% higher after having a constant daily meal frequency, which is kind of crazy if you think about it. So that's a big difference. I still don't think like that's going to be the biggest mover, but I do believe this counts, and it does show like there is actually a benefit to that.
Yep.
But it's not just about that thermic effect, right? Because I think we're both equally big on having kind of like a schedule, like a set meal frequency and creating that structure, right? Having that daily consistent meal frequency.
Yes. Did we mention like thermic defective food, like what it actually is? Did you mention at the beginning? Like thermic defective
Mhm.
food is how
In
many
the beginning,
calories?
yeah.
Okay. I didn't know if you had said like it's how much we burn from digesting and
Yeah,
absorbing
yeah.
food. Okay. Just make sure. Just want to make sure
Yeah,
there.
that's okay.
um, so yeah. Where were we? Sorry. What were we talking about?
Why we think it's important to have like a consistent meal schedule, like saying, okay, I'm going to eat 4 times a day.
Yeah. I actually have experience with this. I'm sure that you do. Um, I was the type of person that would eat kind of like all day. Like I'd have my breakfast and then snack and then lunch and then snacks and like random snacks in between. And I was always hungry when I was doing that. And I switched and I started having bigger breakfasts, which then kept me satiated until lunch. I'd have a bigger lunch, which then would keep me satiated for like a midday snack, and then I'd have my dinner. And I basically was only eating 4 times a day, and my hunger leveled out, and I was not hungry all day. And it's because I was having those, the meals were spread out, 3 to 4 hours in between. They were bigger meals and they're just more satiating. Versus if you're having smaller meals throughout the day, again, they're not going to be satiating. Hunger is going to be high. And then you're more likely to overconsume calories when doing that, right? Like snacking and stuff like that. So that I've experience with that. It also, what plays into that is blood sugar, right? So like giving yourself, 3 to 4 hours in between meals helps to regulate blood sugar. Versus if you're eating all day, your blood sugar is kind of going up, down, up, down, up, down, and that can cause more hunger and cravings too. So the bigger, more balanced meals helps with hunger and it helps with satiety, or that's the same thing, but it helps with regulating blood sugar, which is gonna play into hunger and satiety.
Yeah, for sure. I think it just makes it way more simple to follow as well.
That too, like I know, and the thing is like I think people who have um schedules, like the same schedule, it can be really easy. I mean, sometimes this can be a little bit trickier when someone has a busier schedule. But I mean, that's going to be an individual thing to figure out, right?
Mm. Yeah, like you could say, hey, I have 4 meals a day. I eat 5 times a day, or 3, 6, whatever. Like I would say, from experience with my clients, at least 4 to 5 seems to be the sweet spot for most people. I'm not a big fan of 3, I will say.
Yeah,
at
me
least
either.
if we're thinking
Yeah.
like staying full, muscle building, etc. 6, I mean, people usually already struggle coming up with meals for like 4 meals,
And I feel like that's getting into the point where like you're kind of eating all day long.
I think so too.
Starting to.
Yeah. It's really just personal preference as well.
Mm-hmm.
So how often do you eat now total?
4.
Yeah, cool. So I'm usually at, let me think, because I'm like 4 to 5. I've been a little random recently, depending on my day with my post or my pre-workout shake. So I have breakfast. Yeah, okay, 5. Yeah, I try to stick to 5, just because my food's going up and up. I like to switch that too sometimes.
Okay. You like to switch it?
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I got to a point in my cut where I was like, well, I'm eating 5 meals. I just don't like how small these meals are anymore.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I figured that I found out I do pretty good in the morning, moving breakfast later. So I just moved to the 4, just so I can have bigger meals. I like bigger meals. I enjoy them more.
Same.
Yeah.
I know we've talked about this, but there's definitely like a psychological aspect to that too, where like you're eating more volume and things like that. It helps me feel full. I mean, the volume will, but it's just, I like eating big meals. It helps from a psychological standpoint. I mean,
Yeah, I think so as well.
and not eating all day long too, like you give digestion a break as well, which we want to do, right? Like we don't just want to be constantly eating all day. We can run into like bloating and things like that. I mean, and that's why, again, that's another reason why I usually space like 3 to 4 hours in between meals, just to give my digestion a break.
For sure. I mean, it even plays into like your hunger hormones and stuff. Like we all know that feeling like when you go to the doctor or something or get a blood test and you fast that morning and you're used to eating breakfast at 8 or 9, whatever. You'll notice if you don't have that breakfast, you'll get hungry at that time too, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. You're changing up your hunger cues and your body will adapt to those.
Yeah. And I'd say just in general, with pretty much everything, like your body does really do very well having a routine, you know, that goes for sleep.
Yep.
But I mean, like pretty much everything else as well. Like everything runs on its own like biological clock, you know?
Right.
And I do think all that aside, you know, if we just look at like the practical side of things, it's just going to make it easier for you to stick to knowing, hey, I have my breakfast, lunch, dinner, evening meal, whatever you want to call it, right? Instead of, maybe I'll eat 3 times a day or maybe 6, or I'll just eat whenever I feel like it. I think that's a lot of like, this might be like one of those things where people have a weird experience with like macros and stuff because they're just trying to like
hit their
randomly
numbers.
collect some here and there. And it's kind of like, well, there's no strategy here. Like we're just kind of doing random shit,
right?
You know?
Right.
I sometimes have people work on this too, like from the very beginning. Like if there's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of stuff that we got to fix, you know, let's just start there.
Yeah.
Come up with a meal frequency, pick a couple foods, and let's just try to stick to that for a little bit, you know?
Yep. And like someone has a schedule that's kind of, erratic, or they have different schedule on different days. Like we make up different schedule timings for that too. But I mean, it's not, I don't think that like we need to say, okay, I'm going to eat at like 8 and then I'm going to eat at 12. And like, there's got to be flexibility within the structure.
100%.
Right. Cause that can just become stressful.
Yeah, I think so too, because then you would almost get into like and this is me personally when I got into intermittent fasting, and if we're talking like nutrient and meal timing and all that, like that's kind of included in that too. It's not like how often you eat maybe, but like how long, you know, or how much time you have to eat. But still,
right.
There was a point where I took that too far, where I was really worried to break my fast. This was even like taking supplements. I was like Googling like, does magnesium break your fast? Like those kind of things, you know? Because I heard a certain CrossFitter on YouTube saying how much he loved it, not having any idea if it would actually be a good idea for me. Mm-hmm. And guess what? It wasn't. I was really fucking cranky.
I bet.
People around me, I was on tour back then too. People told me like, you just gotta start eating in the evening because it's...
I am definitely not the person who can intermittent fast. That's for sure.
No, I do it right now. Basically, I just don't call it that. But like my mornings, like I kept that habit for my cut, and I enjoy it. You know, so I get up at 5
in the morning.
Yeah, I do as well. But I feel like somehow I can just kind of sit in more focused and stuff, not having like a very heavy meal in my stomach.
Yeah.
So I go from like 5 to 10. I just kind of like, it's just coffee, you know? So I guess I'm fasting, but I don't have to call it intermittent fasting.
Right.
I just eat when I like it, you know?
Right. I guess, well, one thing when I was going through a lot of my Rose, can you hear she's being a little, hold on, let me let her out. Gosh.
It's going to be a recurring theme. Rose crying, leaving. There we go. That's quick.
So one thing when I was going through, I mean, I'm still doing a lot of my gut stuff. It's just ongoing. But one thing I started to implement then was like, I just cut off eating around like 7 at night. And then I don't eat until like 8. So I guess you could call that like intermittent fasting, but I'm really just not eating. I'm just cutting off eating at a certain time at night again. And that's coming from the standpoint of like just giving my gut a break.
Yeah, 100%. And I was watching that same reel again this morning. I was laughing so hard.
So funny.
No, but like, I think with the meal frequency, with the meal timing, and even nutrient timing, like, I do want to also mention that this is a detail, right? If we look at the nutrition pyramid by Eric Helms, and if the listener is not familiar with that, look it up. Nutrition pyramid by Eric Helms. It's amazing. But you'll see energy balance. You got macronutrients and you have micronutrients. And then it's nutrient timing and then supplements. But nutrient timing, like, it'll make a little bit of a difference, and it can. And I like getting a little bit more out of nutrient timing when the time is right, when clients are ready for that. But I don't think altogether that a lot of people should really worry about it.
Yeah.
If the rest is not taken care of, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Yeah, like you said, it's kind of like a detail. It's a detail type of thing. But I mean, again, totally depends on the person. Some people are going to do better with the structure. You also have to just, be aware of how you're feeling. Like if you're having multiple meals during the day and you're super hungry, maybe we switch it up and try and figure, something else and try bigger and less frequent meals. There are people who just feel better with eating across the day more often. I mean, so again, it totally depends on the individual and how they're responding and how they're feeling and really what works for them.
Yeah, 100%. And your schedule, like your work. If you want to eat 5 times, but your work literally doesn't allow for it, then, let's maybe not eat 5 times a day. Right. Let's make it easier. Mm-hmm. Do you have a lot of shift working clients?
Not right now. No. They're
I've been getting more recently. Yeah.
But like I have in the past, and you have like consistency and stuff is going to look different, depending on the day. It's something that you kind of have to like shift around, and there's a lot of trial and error that happens there in the beginning to figure out what actually works for that person. I feel like there's no definitive answer to give oh my gosh, I'm having a brain fart. There's no definitive answer to give them, because again, it totally depends on how they're feeling, what their schedule's actually like, what their shift hours are. Right. So the last one I had, we had to do a lot of trial and error to figure it out. Like when she was going to train, right? Things like that.
Yeah, it's tough. No, we have, there's a big hospital here and there's a lot of nurses here. And I've been getting more clients from there, I guess. And it's hard. It's really hard. Like they're there to take care of people, but they still got to take care of themselves too. And I will say 100%. With shift work, it becomes more difficult, I will say.
Absolutely.
Tying that back to the meal frequency. We have it now, or at least with this one person, we're trying to still have those X meals, right? She's currently on 3. We're going to work towards 4 possibly. But she was on 2, so this is already an improvement. And we're just trying to have kind of like a window, of like enough hours so that we can kind of squeeze it. We can kind of make it work both on like the day and the night shift. You know what I mean? So that's something we're trying right now. But what I will say, like it's more tricky,
Oh, big time. Yeah. Shift workers are tough.
Yeah.
And I mean, I feel bad for them in a sense, because I mean, just the circadian rhythm being thrown off like that, it can really impact people, so, but you can make it work. You can figure it out
for sure. It's not optimal,
mm-hmm.
And it's not going to be, but you can still work with it for sure. I do think we need to be aware of like the downsides and the negative health consequences, but we can still mitigate them by at least trying to sleep enough, and trying to stay consistent enough. Just work with what we have. But either way, think it was a good little episode. We ran through it a little quicker than expected.
That's okay.
But I think that's cool. I like the shorter episodes as well.
Yeah.
Cool. You have anything exciting coming up?
Going bird
Anything going on
hunting this
behind the
weekend.
scenes? Oh yeah,
Yeah. We're
with
taking the
both dogs.
Yeah. But other than
That's cool.
that, just doing deep work on the business.
Yeah, me too. A lot of stuff going on behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
So that being said, let's wrap it up. Just wanted to thank the listener once again. If you joined this episode, please do us a huge favor. Take a quick screenshot, drop it in your Instagram stories, or drop us a review if you'd like to do so. Or you know what? Just send it to a friend. Send this episode to a friend who you think can benefit from this stuff. So that being said, see you next week, Christine.
Thanks for listening.